Hey, Patrick Cook here. Hey, thanks for joining me on devlog number 6 of Project GBPL. In this devlog, what I want to do is to take a look at some menu options of the asset called Photo Arch Mode. Now, in the previous two devlogs, number 4 and number 5, I was looking at the menu capabilities of the Photo Arch Mode asset. And what I was mostly concerned about is, does the functionality of that asset closely represent a physical camera behavior? And for the most part, it does. There is some tweaking that needs to be done, some modifications, some improvements. But for a prototype, it's pretty close, which is really what I was mostly interested in when I licensed the Photo Arch Mode asset. Now, in this devlog, what I want to do is to take a look at some of the other menu capabilities of the asset to determine whether or not they're keepers. Now, all right, so I'm just going to fire up the camera. There we go. This is the viewfinder. Now, this is not a review of the asset. This is a review of whether or not the asset has the features that would prototype the simulated camera features in a game-based learning environment to learn photography. So now let me call up the menu. Now in devlog number 4, I talked about the exposure capabilities of the asset. I also talked about the camera type. That's in devlog number 4 if you want to go back and review it if you haven't already. In devlog number 5, I talked about the autofocus and the manual focus capabilities. All right. So now let's continue a little bit here. Now, in a whole nother devlog, I want to address the color temperature, which should be pretty close to a white balance capability. I don't think we're quite there in terms of replicating the behavior of a physical camera's white balance setting. I need to look at it more closely and determine whether or not this needs modifications or not. White balance is as important as any other setting in a physical camera, because with white balance, what you're trying to do is you're trying to compensate for the color cast or the color overtones that you'll often get, that such as a fluorescent lamp cast off more like a green, or a mercury lamp cast off kind of like a blue. And in a real world physical camera, the digital sensor is highly sensitive to these color casts, and you want to be able to dial them out, if you say, and that is done with white balance, which is represented here as color temperature. So I think there needs some work to be done in this area, but that's for another time. Now, the asset has the ability to capture screenshots, and that's where the entire screen will be captured into a high resolution JPEG or PNG image file. I'm not really interested in that. But it does have the capability of setting your resolution, and 7 is pretty high. It really gets big. But I'm not interested in screenshots. What I'm more interested in is captures of the actual simulated camera. The screenshot would give me a screenshot of that picture right there. All right, everything, including the character. So, and a very nice capability, but it's not what I want for photography learning. What I want is that the that the image that's captured within the frame of this simulated viewfinder. That's what I want. And this asset does do that, but it also has screenshot capabilities in addition to that, which I don't really want. This light menu is of no value to me whatsoever. If you want, you can take a look at their documentation, learn more about what that is. The save position is of no relevance whatsoever to the purpose of this asset, being a prototype of learning photography within a game-based environment. All right, so let's go to extended here. This is the location on your hard drive where the screen captures are saved. That's fine. I don't really want to give the end user that capability. But anyway, that's what that's for. And you can the file name, actually it's really not a name, it's an extension for instance, you could say, give me a prefix of something like that, or you can give me the end of the file that says something like that. Okay, so that's very simple. Now, they've got a bloom capability. This rest of this here is leveraging the Unreal Engine's capability called post-processing. And it's very, very, very powerful, where you can actually apply a lot of different effects that the Unreal Engine is able to implement on a camera. Bloom is one of them, and you can see here, let's just go back in here. You can see here that I've enabled the bloom, and if I really crank it up here, you can see what's going on. Bloom is really it's an exaggeration, an accentuation of the highlights within the scene. That's why you'll see that the whites here in the sky are really blown out, and that's because I cranked it up pretty high. Okay, but I'm not really not interested in the bloom. It's an effect. It's interesting for creative, artistic purposes. Are you going to find that in a physical camera? Maybe, maybe not. But it doesn't really, in my opinion, it doesn't really contribute to learning photography. It is an interesting effect that can be dialed in, but effects are not really kind of learning photography. More on the creative side, but you can be very creative with a physical camera with just its basic capabilities. And you don't really need these add-ons. It's interesting. It's an interesting effect. But is it relevant to learning photography? Perhaps not. All right. Okay, so we also have, interesting, we have what's called LUTs, lookup table, which is basically a definition of a predefined set of properties that are applied, and then the properties of the post-processing are set within the Unreal Engine capabilities, and you have some interesting effects. All right, so this is the black and white LUT. You probably will find this in a real camera, no problem. It's a style, they often refer to it as. Does it contribute to learning photography? Maybe, if you're trying to learn monochrome, black and white. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, greenish. We got some interesting effects here. All right. Do these effects contribute to learning photography? That's the question. And I believe that any feature that is included in Project GBPL, whatever it might be named someday, Any feature that does not contribute to learning photography, that's really not the place for it. All right? But anyway, we'll set that to none. The line focus traces of no interest whatsoever to this particular application. Here, if you have it got an interesting capability to dial in the diaphragm blades. That's the iris. That's what your aperture sets. Your aperture will set the size of the diaphragm, and the diaphragm has blades, and this is how your iris will open and close. And to have the ability to increase the number of blades in your aperture is all very interesting. And when you have like lens flares and very, very bright highlights against a very dark background, these diaphragm blades would make quite an interesting effect. Do they contribute to learning photography? Well, maybe very advanced creative, but most people can't change the blades of their lens aperture anyway. They have to change out the lens. So, in a real world camera, even a mirrorless, which is predominantly electronic, you don't have the ability to change the number of blades in your iris, not in a particular lens. You'd have to swap out the lens. Anyway, and lenses with, these kind of blades, pretty expensive stuff. So I don't believe that this is going to be part of the final functionality. All right, so that's enough for this devlog. What I'm trying to do here is to explore the capabilities of the asset called Photo Arch Mode, which is something that I acquired so that I can put together a prototype that would get Project GBPL close to the behavior of a physical camera. We do have some very interesting effects, very well done, nicely implemented, but not all of these functions on the actual asset are relevant to learning and teaching photography in a simulated game environment. So what we want to be able to do is kind of clean this up so that we have a nice environment by which to learn photography, or maybe I should say to teach photography. And I believe that any feature or function that is added within this environment that doesn't either directly or indirectly contribute to the point and the purpose of game simulation for teaching or learning photography probably shouldn't be there. It becomes distracting, it becomes interesting perhaps, but does it contribute to the learning? That's really the question. So if a feature or a function doesn't have something to do with actually learning real-world photography, then it probably shouldn't be there. Hey, so again, thanks for joining me on this devlog. It's a pleasure to have you along. I'm happy to be able to show you this kind of cool stuff. I think that Project GBPL, I think it's got a lot of capabilities that can be built into the environment for teaching photography. I think it's got some good potential. Let's keep the project moving. Please join me up on the Discord server. That's called Project GBPL. There's a link to the Discord server in the YouTube description. Come on up, join into the discussion, and let's keep this project moving forward. Okay, so thanks a lot. You have a great day. Bye-bye.